It started on my 75th birthday. I should have been surrounded by warmth, laughter, familiar voices singing, happy birthday slightly off-key. Maybe even a bit of frosting on the nose from a playful grandchild. That's what birthdays used to feel like, chaotic, imperfect, and full of love. But not this year. This year, I sat in a cold, modern dining room with walls the color of wet cement and furniture that looked like it had never been used. My son, Matthew, and his wife, Brooke, had just moved into their new house in the suburbs, one of those overpriced, sterile developments with no trees and too many rules. Brooke was at the far end of the table, sipping a glass of red wine like she was at a business dinner. Matthew was next to me, smiling politely as he placed a vanilla cake, my least favorite flavor, in front of me. "Go on, Mom," he said, placing a knife beside the plate. "Make a wish." I stared at the cake. The candles flickered, casting uneven shadows across the table. There were 75 of them, not real candles, just digital lights shaped like flames. Brooke had insisted it was safer that way. No balloons, no music, no grandkids running around. Just 4 smiles and an overwhelming sense that I was not wanted here. Still, I smiled and blew out the candles. As the soft digital lights dimmed, I didn't make a wish. I already knew it wouldn't come true. Brooke stood up quickly and began clearing the plates before anyone had touched the cake. "We've actually got something to share," she said, her tone too cheerful. "It's about your house, Sophie." I blinked. "My house." Matthew shifted in his seat. "We've been talking, Mom. The beach house, it's a lot to manage. And now that you're older." Brooke cut in with that rehearsed, saccharine tone she used whenever she pretended to care. "We think it's time to look into selling. We've already spoken to a realtor." I froze. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the porcelain plate. "You what?" I said, the words catching in my throat. Matthew looked uncomfortable, but didn't back down. "We're just trying to be realistic. The house is big, it's far from the hospital, and you're alone out there, Mom." I stared at him. My son. My only child. The boy I raised after his father passed away when Matthew was just 12. I had worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, taken out a second mortgage to help him through college. And this cold, calculated conversation was my reward. "It's not safe for you," Brooke added, crossing her legs. "You could slip in the tub. What if you fall and no one's around?" I slowly stood from the table, pushing the chair back with a loud screech. "I've lived in that house for over 40 years, I said, my voice trembling. "That house was your father's dream, Matthew. We built it together. With our bare hands. Brick by brick. He died believing it would stay in the family." Brooke didn't flinch. "And it will. Once it's sold, we can put the money toward a nice assisted living condo. One closer to us. One that makes sense." Assisted living. They weren't asking. They were informing me. I turned to Matthew. "Did you forge something? Did you go behind my back?" He looked down, then quickly back up. "We talked to your lawyer. Just to get advice. That's all." The room spun. "You talked to my lawyer without my consent?" I asked, my voice cracking. "We thought it would be easier," he mumbled. "We were trying to help." "No," I whispered. "You weren't." I could barely breathe. My own son had decided to sell the home I shared with his father, without asking me, without discussing it, and had looped in my lawyer behind my back. "Get out of my life," I whispered, grabbing my coat. "Mom, don't be dramatic. You invited me here on my birthday to tell me I'm being moved out of my own home. That's not love. That's cruelty." Brooke scoffed. "You're being unreasonable. We're offering you a solution." "I don't need your solution," I spat, my hands trembling. "I need a family." I left the cake untouched, the candles extinguished, but still warm. The night air bit at my face as I walked out into the driveway, my keys clenched in my hand. I drove back to the beach house in silence, the road winding like a memory I couldn't shake. When I pulled into the gravel driveway and saw the outline of the house, its white wood siding glowing under the moonlight, I finally broke down. I fell to my knees in the entryway, clutching my purse to my chest like a shield. My tears soaked into the hardwood floor. This house had seen love, laughter, loss. And now it had seen betrayal. But I wasn't done. They thought I was weak, that I'd go quietly, that I'd accept whatever plan they laid out for me. But they forgot who I was. I had survived the death of my husband. I had survived raising a son alone with nothing but grit and determination. And now I would survive this. The next morning, I made a pot of strong coffee, pulled out the dusty folder labeled estate documents, and picked up the phone. When the receptionist answered, I didn't hesitate. This is Sophie Hale. I need to schedule a meeting with Mr. Grayson. I'm changing my will. She hesitated, then responded quickly. Yes, of course, Mrs. Hale. I'll let him know. Because despite what my son and his wife thought, the house, my house, was still mine. And I was about to remind them who they were dealing with. They had mistaken kindness for weakness. But Sophie Hale was not done yet. Not by a long shot. Before we continue, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to more powerful stories like this one. I hadn't stepped foot into Mr. Grayson's office in nearly 6 years. He'd handled my estate planning back when Matthew was still calling me every Sunday without fail, back when I thought love and blood were enough to protect me from betrayal. But now, sitting across from him in his leather-backed chair, I realized how much had changed. He looked older, not just in the face, but in the way he moved, slower, like the weight of other people's mistakes had finally settled in his bones. Sophie, he said warmly, it's good to see you, though I wish it were under better circumstances. I nodded, my hands folded tightly in my lap. You spoke to my son. Grayson's smile faltered. He leaned back slightly, guilt flickering across his features. He came by a few weeks ago. Said you were considering transferring the deed early, for tax purposes. I thought. You thought wrong, I said coldly. I never gave him that instruction. He lied. Grayson's face tightened. Then I owe you an apology. I should have called to confirm with you directly. I shook my head. You weren't the only one he deceived. There was a long silence. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the soft tick of the old brass clock on the wall. I stared out the window, watching the waves crash in the distance, the sea always reminding me that even destruction can be beautiful. I want to amend the will, I said finally. Remove Matthew as primary beneficiary. The house will no longer go to him. Grayson blinked. Are you sure, Sophie? This is a serious step. I turned to him, my voice steady. So was raising him. Alone. And apparently that wasn't enough. He nodded slowly, pulling a fresh set of documents from his file drawer. All right then, let's begin. As he started typing, I stared at the framed picture on his desk. His grandkids, smiling, arms wrapped around him. I used to imagine that was my future. Beach days with my grandchildren, family dinners at my home, laughter filling the halls again. But those were just fantasies now, ghosts of a life I no longer had. Within an hour, the draft was ready. I signed the necessary pages, hand trembling only slightly as I looped my name. When it was done, Grayson leaned back, sighing. If this escalates, Sophie, your son may contest it, especially if he believes there was an original agreement in place. I met his gaze. Let him try. I'll be ready. That evening, back at the house, I sat on the porch, watching the orange sun sink into the horizon. The ocean breeze whipped through my sweater, but I didn't move. I just sat listening to the surf and thinking about everything I had done for Matthew. The birthday parties. The late-night hospital visits. The years I worked overtime at the diner just to afford his textbooks. How had it come to this? The next morning, I was up early. The house felt different now, like it was rooting for me. As if it knew it was under siege, and we were in this together. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table with a yellow notepad. I began to make a list. Not of groceries or chores. No, this list was of everything I needed to protect myself. Secure new lawyer, check. Safe place to store new documents. Speak to Margaret. Get outside witness of Matthew's pressure. Backup copies. Install cameras just in case. It may have sounded paranoid to someone else, but not to a woman whose own son had already gone behind her back once. Later that day, I called Margaret. She was my closest friend. We'd met in our 20s when we were both newly married and dreaming about futures we couldn't yet see. "Sophie," she said when she picked up. "You okay?" "No," I said simply. "But I will be." I told her everything: the birthday ambush, the lawyer visit, the amended will. She didn't interrupt, didn't even gasp. She just listened. When I finished, there was a long pause. "I always knew Brooke had sharp edges," Margaret said finally. "But I didn't think Matthew would be the knife." "Neither did I." "I need a witness," I said. "Someone to verify that I'm of sound mind, in case they try to twist things." "I'll be there tomorrow morning," she said immediately. "Bring your will. We'll get it notarized at my bank." And Sophie, "Yes, you're not alone. Not in this." I hung up and let myself cry for the first time since that awful birthday. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in weeks, I felt seen. That night, I walked through each room of the beach house, touching the worn banister my husband had built by hand, running my fingers along the faded wallpaper we'd argued over for weeks, pausing by the old upright piano Matthew used to play when he was 10. He'd once told me he wanted to be a composer, back when he still dreamed. When I entered the master bedroom, I sat at the edge of the bed and opened my nightstand drawer. Inside was the only photo I kept there: Matthew at age 6, missing front teeth and holding up a macaroni frame he'd made for Mother's Day. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't want to fight him, but he had chosen this path. And now he was going to learn something he had clearly forgotten. Just because a woman is quiet doesn't mean she's weak. By sunrise, Margaret was already pulling into my gravel driveway. Her old blue hatchback came to a rattling stop just beside the wild hydrangeas my husband planted decades ago. She stepped out holding 2 coffee cups and a manila folder. No small talk. No pity. Just the quiet, steady energy of a woman who'd seen enough in her own life to understand when the time for words was over. We sat in the sunroom, surrounded by photos, seashells, and time. I handed her the freshly signed copy of my new will, watching her scan it line by line. When she finished, she looked up at me. "They're going to hate this." I smiled bitterly. Good. An hour later, we were at her credit union, sitting across from a notary who asked us both questions slowly and carefully, likely due to my age. I appreciated the caution. I answered clearly, precisely. Yes, I was of sound mind. No, I wasn't being coerced. Yes, this was my full and final decision. When the stamp hit the paper with a firm clunk, I felt something in my chest settle, like a stone finally finding its place. The will was real now. Irrefutable. Margaret insisted we get breakfast after. I wasn't hungry, but I agreed. We sat at the same diner where Matthew had eaten pancakes in his Spider-Man pajamas as a boy. I stared at the booth he used to leap into, his face always sticky with syrup, and I felt a pang so deep I thought I might break. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" I asked quietly. Margaret didn't look up from her tea. "No. I think you're a mother who finally said, 'Enough.' And that's brave." I nodded, blinking away the sting behind my eyes. Back at home, I filed the new will in 3 separate places. 1 copy went into my fireproof safe, another into a sealed envelope in Margaret's possession, and the 3rd I mailed to Richard Grayson, certified and signed, with a note: "Keep this safe. Do not release to anyone but me. No exceptions." The next few days were strangely quiet. Too quiet, like the calm before a storm. I half expected a knock on the door, a screaming voicemail, a letter slipped under my doormat in Brooke's tidy handwriting. But nothing came. Until Friday. I had just returned from the market, arms full of canned soup and cat litter, when I saw it. A black luxury car parked at the edge of my property. Matthew stood beside it, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Brooke remained in the driver's seat, looking down at her phone like she was too bored to get out. I froze mid-step, bags dangling from my fingers. "Mom," Matthew called. "We need to talk." I considered pretending I hadn't seen him, walking right inside, locking the door. But I was done running. I squared my shoulders and walked toward him. Didn't expect to see you here, I said flatly. Not without a realtor. He flinched. Can we talk inside?
No.
He sighed, frustrated.
Fine.
Out here's fine. Brooke rolled her window down but stayed in the car. Matthew took a step closer. I heard you changed your will. I didn't answer. Why? He asked, his voice strained. Why would you do that? I stared at him. Really stared. He looked tired, maybe even ashamed. But I'd learned not to trust appearances. Because you tried to take something from me that wasn't yours, I said evenly. And you didn't even ask. It wasn't like that, he said, running a hand through his hair. We were worried. Brooke's been saying you seemed confused sometimes. Forgetting things. There it was. The narrative. Let me make this very clear, Matthew, I said, stepping closer. I am not confused. I am not senile. I am not broken. But I am angry. And you need to understand something. You don't get to frame me as incapable just so you can take what I've built. His jaw clenched. I was just trying to help. No, you are trying to control, I snapped. You and your wife decided that my life, my home, could be managed better by you. But I'm not some antique you can polish up and sell. From the car, Brooke finally spoke. You're being irrational. Irrational. I laughed. Coming from the woman who thought a vanilla cake with fake candles was a good way to celebrate someone's 75th birthday? Spare me. Matthew held up his hands. Okay. Look, we messed up. Maybe we got ahead of ourselves. But don't punish us by cutting us off. This isn't punishment, I said softly. This is protection. His eyes finally met mine. So that's it? You're just writing me out of your life? I paused. No, I said. You did that. The day you chose silence while Brooke dismissed me like I was some worn-out coat that didn't match your new life. Silence hung between us, heavy and cruel. Matthew looked away, swallowing hard. I thought you'd understand. You thought I'd surrender. I corrected. But you forgot who raised you. He stepped back. We'll talk again. I'm sure we will, I said. But next time, bring a lawyer. Not a list of excuses. He turned and walked back to the car. Brooke didn't even glance at me as he slid into the passenger seat. The car pulled away slowly, dust kicking up behind it, like a storm cloud trailing the destruction it left behind. Inside the house, I sat on the couch, my heart racing. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I expected. But I felt something else too, relief. The lines had been drawn. There was no pretending anymore. No family dinners. No hollow apologies. No more wondering if maybe they didn't mean it.
They did.
And now I would protect what was mine, even if it meant going to war. The dust hadn't even settled from Matthew and Brooke's surprise visit before the phone calls began. Unknown numbers. Silent voicemails. A text from an old friend of mine in town saying she'd heard rumors about me selling the house and moving into assisted living. They were planting seeds, testing narratives, seeing what would stick. I ignored most of it, until the call came from Grayson's office. Mrs. Hale, the assistant said, clearly flustered. We've had a development. I set down my mug of tea slowly. Go on. Your son came by again. He wanted to discuss your competency. He brought a letter from a physician. I felt the color drain from my face. What kind of letter? She hesitated. A mental health assessment, dated last week, stating signs of memory lapse. He implied that, under such concerns, the validity of your new will could be questioned. My hand tightened around the edge of the kitchen table. What physician signed it? Someone named Dr. Aaron Packer. From his insurance network, I believe. I didn't know the name, and I hadn't seen a new doctor in over a year. My heart pounded. I forced myself to breathe evenly. Do not accept any further documents from my son or his wife without contacting me directly. Is that clear? Yes, absolutely. I hung up and immediately called Margaret. My voice was shaking, but my words were sharp. They're trying to invalidate the will. They forged a letter, some quack claiming I'm mentally unstable. Margaret didn't hesitate. Then it's time to go on the offensive. That afternoon, she drove me to her attorney's office, a woman named Jennifer Dean, who had a reputation in our town for being meticulous, relentless, and terrifying in court. Jennifer didn't greet me with pleasantries. She got straight to the point. I understand you've recently amended your estate plan and your son is attempting to contest it by claiming diminished capacity. First things first, do you have a physician you trust? Yes, I replied. Dr. Samuel Hayes. He's been my doctor for 10 years. Call him, she said, handing me her office phone. Ask him to examine you and provide an official cognitive evaluation. We'll need it notarized and ready to file. I made the call. Dr. Hayes picked up after 2 rings. Sophie, he said warmly. You okay? I explained the situation. Quickly, bluntly. I heard the disbelief in his silence. Absolutely not, he said. You're one of the sharpest people I know. I'll do the assessment tomorrow morning. Come early. I nodded. Thank you. Jennifer took notes as I spoke. Next, we'll file a preemptive declaration, a legal statement verifying your cognitive fitness, signed by a physician and a third-party witness. It protects your revised will from being challenged without serious, documented proof. I sat back, feeling both overwhelmed and oddly grateful. I wasn't alone anymore. I had an army now. Small, perhaps, but fierce. That night, I opened my photo albums, the ones I hadn't touched in years. I flipped past the vacations, the Christmases, the birthday parties where Matthew used to make me handmade cards with crooked letters and too much glitter. I stopped at one photo. Matthew at age 10, asleep on my lap in the hospital waiting room. His arm in a sling. I remember the accident like it was yesterday, how I sat up all night, holding him, whispering stories to keep him calm. How had we come from that to this? The next morning, Dr. Hayes greeted me with a firm hug and led me to his office. The tests were routine. Questions, recall tasks, orientation exercises. I passed them all. He signed off on a letter that would make it nearly impossible for Matthew to argue I wasn't in my right mind. You're still the same Sophie who always beats me at trivia, he chuckled as he handed over the envelope. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. That Sophie never thought she'd need to defend her own sanity against her child. He placed a hand on my shoulder. If he wants a war, make sure he knows who he's up against. By the time I delivered the documents to Jennifer's office, she already had a plan drafted. We'll file a protective injunction, she said. It'll freeze any action your son might try to take, legal or financial, regarding the house. He won't be able to touch a thing until the court clears the claim. She paused, then leaned forward. Sophie, I need to ask, do you believe your son would go further than this? Would he forge more documents? Attempt to access your accounts? I hesitated. Before last week, I would have said no.
But now?
I think he's capable of anything. Jennifer nodded. Then I want you to go to the bank and change your security settings. New passwords. Remove him as a backup contact. And do it today. I followed every instruction. I changed my PINs, closed a dormant joint account I had foolishly left open for emergencies, and removed both Matthew and Brooke from all points of access. And then, for the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. Until Sunday morning. I was making eggs when the doorbell rang. I peered through the side window and froze. Matthew stood there, alone, no car in sight. His eyes looked tired, his jaw clenched. I opened the door slowly, keeping the screen shut. What do you want? I asked flatly. To talk, he said. Without Brooke. Just me. I said nothing. He rubbed his hands together. I think we need to stop this. This war. It's gone too far. No, I said. It went too far when you brought a forged medical letter to my lawyer. His face tightened. That wasn't me. That was Brooke. She said it would help, that it was just leverage. My stomach churned. He was trying to separate himself now. Act like the puppet instead of the puppeteer. Don't you dare hide behind your wife now, Matthew. I snapped. You let it happen. You sat silent while she plotted, and that makes you just as guilty. I know, he whispered. That's why I'm here. I'm trying to fix it. I looked at him, really looked, and for a brief second I saw the boy he used to be. But it flickered out as fast as it came. You broke something in me, I said quietly. And I don't know if it can be fixed. He swallowed hard. I'll keep trying. I didn't respond. I just closed the door, gently but firmly, and walked back into the kitchen. The eggs were cold now, but the fire inside me was burning hotter than ever. I didn't open the door the next time he came. It was 3 days later. Same knock. Same shadow on the porch. I stood behind the curtains, watching him shift from foot to foot like a schoolboy, waiting outside the principal's office. But I didn't move. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of another conversation until I was ready. Because something had changed. Not just in Matthew, but in me. After months of heartbreak and betrayal, the shock had faded. Now, all that was left was clarity. The fog had lifted, and in its place was a sharp, focused resolve. This was no longer just about a house. This was about history,
Power.
and legacy. The very next morning, I called Jennifer again. I want to transfer the house, I said.
Now.
While I'm alive, I want it protected under trust. She didn't hesitate. We can draft the paperwork today. And I don't want Matthew or Brooke anywhere near it, I continued. I want a clause that makes it legally untouchable, even if I die tomorrow. Jennifer's voice sharpened with approval. You're thinking like a woman who's been through war. I like that. By noon, we had the first draft ready. I was placing the beach house under what's called a living irrevocable trust. It meant I would still live there and control everything, but upon my death, the house would not be part of my general estate. It would bypass probate, and it would go exactly where I wanted it to no one with the last name Hale. As I signed the paperwork, I felt something loosen in my chest, a band that had been squeezing tighter with every lie, every condescending phone call, every insult dressed as concern. When it was done, I sat back in Jennifer's office, my fingers resting lightly on the edge of the folder. She studied me. Do you know who you want to leave it to? The truth was I didn't. For so long, I'd believed the house would be Matthew's. It had been a silent promise in my heart for years. Something his father and I had built for the future. But now that future had been twisted into something ugly. I need time, I told her. But it won't go to him. That much I know. She nodded, sealing the documents. You've done the right thing. But when I returned home that evening, something felt off. I walked up the front steps, keys clutched in my hand, and froze. The screen door was unlatched. I never left it like that. A chill ran through me. I opened the door cautiously, listening. Silence. My heart thudded against my ribs as I stepped inside. Everything looked untouched, but too untouched. Like someone had been here and put things back exactly the way they found them. Too carefully. I checked the drawers in the kitchen. My files. The safe in the hallway. Nothing gone. Nothing moved. And yet I knew. I could feel it in my bones. Someone had been inside my home. I locked every window. Every door. I placed a chair under the back doorknob and slept with the lights on. The sound of the waves, once soothing, now felt distant.
Hollow.
The next morning, I went to the sheriff. He was a big man named Tom Becker, the kind who knew everyone in town by their first name and still called older women ma'am with genuine respect. I told him everything. About the house, the will, the forged documents, and the break-in I couldn't prove. He didn't laugh. Didn't brush me off. He just nodded. Sophie, I'm going to install a camera on your front porch myself. And I'm going to file a report. Might not go anywhere yet, but if anything else happens, we'll have it documented. I blinked back tears. Thank you, Tom. You're not alone in this, he said. Don't let them make you feel like you are. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to play dirty, so could I. I went to the attic and dug out the boxes I hadn't touched in years. Letters, journals, old photographs, and the folder, thick and yellowed, containing every financial sacrifice I had made for Matthew's education, his first home down payment, even the medical bills when Brooke had complications during her second pregnancy. Proof of every time I had given without asking anything in return. I wasn't sure how I would use it yet, but I would. Later that week, I received an email from Grayson's office.
Short. Cryptic.
Just a heads up. Your son has requested a copy of the original deed and tax assessments on the beach house. We denied access. But be careful. He's preparing something.
Preparing something.
Those words played on a loop in my head. That evening, as I poured myself a glass of wine and stared at the sea, I heard footsteps again. Outside. I turned off the lights, peeked through the curtain. A dark SUV, parked across the street. Engine running. Not moving. Watching. And then it drove off. No license plate I could read. No face I could see. But I didn't need to. I already knew. They weren't done.
But neither was I.
And the next move would be mine. They wanted a quiet victory. That much was clear now. Matthew and Brooke had counted on my silence, the guilt, the grief, the shame, to keep me still while they slithered through legal loopholes and manufactured lies. They thought I'd be too embarrassed to fight back publicly, that I'd fade into the background, just another confused, old woman too frail to resist. But they forgot who raised Matthew. And they forgot what I'm capable of when I've been wronged. So I went public. It started with a letter to the editor. Our town newspaper, the Seabreeze Sentinel, was small but well-read. The editor, a woman named Darlene who once wrote me a thank you note after I donated handmade quilts to the nursing home, published it without changing a single word. To those who believe age makes us invisible, think again. My name is Sophie Hale. I am 75 years old. I am of sound mind, sound body, and I still own the house my late husband and I built with our bare hands. Recently, my adult son and his wife attempted to pressure me into selling that home, without my consent, by filing forged documents and false medical claims suggesting I was mentally unfit. They underestimated me. This house is not just a property. It is a legacy, and I will not be erased from it. The day it was published, my phone rang off the hook.
Friends.
Neighbors. Even former students from when I taught elementary school decades ago. Sophie, we're behind you. I always thought Brooke had a mean streak. Let us know if you need anything at all. The support flooded in. But it wasn't just emotional. It was tactical. Margaret called that evening with a spark in her voice I hadn't heard since her husband passed. You just went viral in this town. Brooke's friends are trying to defend her online, but it's not landing. Everyone's talking, and for once, they're talking about you. I exhaled slowly, a weight lifting off my chest. For the first time in weeks, the tide was turning. Then a knock at the door.
Not Matthew this time.
It was Rebecca Jennings, the local news anchor for Channel 6. Young, ambitious, and known for her human interest pieces, the kind that made people cry before the weather report. I read your letter, she said. And I think people need to hear your story. On camera. I stared at her. I'm not a victim. Exactly, she said. That's what makes this powerful. We scheduled the interview for Friday. She came early with a small crew, just her, a cameraman, and a boom mic operator. I wore my late husband's favorite color, forest green, and sat on the back porch with the sea as my backdrop. I'm not here to tell people how to feel about their families, I said into the camera. But I am here to remind them that loyalty should never be a transaction. I gave everything to my son. And when I said no, just once, he tried to take the rest. Rebecca leaned in. What do you want people to take away from this? I looked directly into the lens. That your dignity is worth defending, even if it's against your own blood. The piece aired that night. Prime time. And within 24 hours, everything changed. The next morning, Brooke's employer, a prominent real estate firm, quietly removed her from their featured agents list. A former client posted a review about ethical concerns. The comments on her Instagram, once full of lavish brunches and filtered family photos, began to turn. You tried to steal from your own mother-in-law? Maybe don't post about gratitude when you tried to evict someone on her birthday. Karma's coming, Brooke. Matthew remained silent. No posts. No calls. No visitors. Until Sunday. That's when I received a letter, hand-delivered. Not an apology. A cease and desist. It accused me of libel, defamation, and malicious public misrepresentation. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I forwarded it to Jennifer. She called within the hour. They're rattled. This isn't a legal move, it's a scare tactic. Let me handle it.
And she did.
By Monday, she had filed a countersuit, intentional infliction of emotional distress, property interference, and elder exploitation. Suddenly, the battle wasn't just personal. It was legal.
Public.
And documented. I didn't hide anymore. I went to the market like I always did. I attended my book club. I showed up to the quilting circle. And everywhere I went, someone stopped me. Someone squeezed my hand. Someone said, "Thank you for speaking up." I wasn't just reclaiming my house. I was reclaiming my voice. That week, I hosted a small gathering at the beach house. 10 women, all over 60. All of them with stories they hadn't dared to share until now. "He tried to sell my car while I was in the hospital," one said. "My daughter forged my signature on a loan," another whispered. "My granddaughter emptied my savings when I let her use my laptop." Every story ended the same way. Silence.
Shame.
Surrender. But not anymore. We decided to form something informal for now. A group. A network. A space where women like us could speak without fear. Share resources. Compare lawyers. Support each other. We called it Sea Line Sisters. Because the tide may rise, but so do we. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch again. Same view.
Same sea.
But I wasn't the same woman. Matthew and Brooke had underestimated me. They had wanted to take the house. But instead, they gave me a platform. And I was only just beginning to use it. By the time the court summons officially arrived on my doorstep, I didn't flinch. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with an embossed legal seal on the front, the kind meant to intimidate. But intimidation didn't work on me anymore. I'd stood in the storm, bruised and shaken, and found my footing. They'd taken their shots. And I was still standing. I took it straight to Jennifer's office. She flipped through the pages with practiced speed, eyebrows lifting slightly. "They're contesting everything," she muttered. "The will, the trust, even the cognitive declaration. It's a full frontal challenge." "Of course it is," I said, folding my hands in my lap. This was never about concern. It was about control. Jennifer nodded grimly. "They've hired new counsel. Out of town. Expensive. They'll bleed themselves dry before I let them take this house," I said. "I hope it costs them." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine with that glint of steel I had come to rely on. "It's going to get uglier before it gets better. They're going to try and paint you as unstable, vindictive, emotionally unfit. You ready for that?" I didn't hesitate. I was ready the moment they made me sit through that birthday dinner like a burden. Jennifer reached into her drawer and slid over another folder. "Then there's something else you should see." She opened it, revealing a document with my name on it, but not my handwriting. It was dated 2 years prior. A quitclaim deed.
Filed.
Stamped.
Signed.
Allegedly by me. It transferred a future interest in the beach house to Matthew. Language vague enough to slip by unnoticed. Legal enough to be dangerous. My hands went cold. "I never signed that," I whispered. "I know," she said. But Brooke was working in real estate at the time. She knew exactly how to bury it. Jennifer's finger tapped the signature line. "This was filed right after you were in the hospital for pneumonia, remember?" I did. I'd been under sedation for days. Confused. Barely conscious at times. Matthew had visited once. Brooke, not at all. They'd used my weakness. They'd planned this for years. I sat back in the chair, trembling with rage. "I want them prosecuted." Jennifer didn't blink. "Then we escalate."
Fraud. Forgery.
"We involve the DA." I nodded, swallowing down the bile in my throat. "Do it." That evening, I stood in the hallway outside the study and stared at the painting above my late husband's desk, a seascape we bought together on our honeymoon. It had hung there for 48 years. And suddenly, I wasn't looking at a painting. I was looking at a promise. I pulled it down. Behind it, inside a recessed wall safe I hadn't touched in a decade, sat a leather journal. My husband's. I opened it. His handwriting, clean, angular, unmistakably his, filled the first page. This house is for Sophie. It always will be. No matter what happens after I'm gone, may this place remind her of who she is and everything we built together. I clutched the book to my chest and sobbed. Not because I was weak, but because the memory of being loved without question had almost faded, and I needed it back to keep going. The next day, I called the local district attorney's office. Jennifer had already sent the forged documents, the cognitive evaluations, and a formal letter requesting investigation. It didn't take long. By Thursday, a fraud investigator showed up at Brooke's brokerage office. By Friday, her license was suspended pending review. And by Saturday, Matthew showed up at my house again. This time not alone. He brought Ella, my granddaughter. 12 years old. Bright eyes. A quiet soul. And the only one in that entire family who hadn't disappointed me. Mom, Matthew said as I opened the door.
Please, can we talk?
Just the three of us. I stared at Ella. She gave me a small, nervous wave. I stepped aside. Not for him. For her. We sat in the living room. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of the grandfather clock, the one my husband restored the year before he died. Matthew looked thinner. Tired. But my sympathy was spent. I know what you found, he said. The deed. The forgery. I didn't know Brooke did that until recently. I swear. I said nothing. I was blindsided, he added. And I'm sorry. But I'm trying to fix it. You didn't come here to apologize, I said coldly. You brought Ella because you thought she might soften me. He hesitated. Didn't you? I asked again, my voice sharper. Matthew looked down. Yes. I turned to Ella. Sweetheart, do you want to be here? She looked at her dad, then back at me. I wanted to see you. I miss you. I felt my heart crack. You don't need to be in the middle of this, I said gently. But I'm glad you're here. Ella nodded, eyes welling. Matthew cleared his throat. I'm pulling the case, he said. We'll withdraw the legal challenge. And I'm divorcing Brooke. I stared at him, blinking slowly. Why now? Because I finally realized, he whispered. She didn't love me. She loved the idea of control, of wealth. And I let her convince me that protecting us meant betraying you. I was quiet for a long time. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were, I said finally. But I do know this. If you follow through, if you really take accountability, there might still be a path forward. He nodded, looking away. And not for the house, I added. That ship has sailed. He nodded again, this time slower. I understand. I stood up. Take her to the beach. Let her feel what this place was supposed to mean to you. I need time. But I'll be watching. As they stepped outside, Ella turned back to me. I like your house, she said shyly. It feels like someone loved it a lot. I knelt down and smiled. Someone did, and someone still does. As they walked away, I closed the door and exhaled deeply. This war had cost me everything, but it had revealed even more. And now, at last, the storm was passing. But before I could rest, there was still one final decision to make. I thought naming Ella the heir would bring me peace. And for a few quiet days it did. She visited more often, sometimes just to sit with me on the porch and sketch the coastline. Other times she helped me water the garden or bring in the mail. There was a gentle rhythm forming between us, one untouched by her parents' actions, one built from something pure. Choice. But peace, I've learned, is a temporary visitor in houses under siege. The backlash came quickly. It started with a text from Matthew, the kind of message you reread 4 times to be sure you understood it correctly. You gave it to her? She's 12. You seriously want a child to inherit everything instead of your own son? I didn't reply. He followed up 2 days later with an email. A long one. Cold. Businesslike. It included veiled legal threats, references to undue influence, and mentions of family betrayal, as if I were the one who had snuck behind his back. Then the real bombshell arrived. Jennifer called, her voice unusually cautious. "We've received an emergency petition. Matthew is contesting the updated trust, this time using a different strategy." I brace myself. What now? "He's claiming you were coerced into naming a minor as your sole heir. He says Ella was manipulated into replacing him, that you're not thinking clearly, and she's being used as a pawn in an emotional retaliation." My chest tightened. He's accusing me of manipulating my own granddaughter? "I'm afraid so," Jennifer said. "He's requesting the court appoint an independent conservator to oversee your financial decisions until you're reevaluated." A conservatorship. They were trying to take control of my entire life now. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I laughed. A hollow, bitter sound that echoed through the kitchen. "I'm not Britney Spears," I muttered. "No," Jennifer replied, deadpan. "You're smarter." We filed our response the same day. Every test, every notarized declaration, the camera footage of me walking alone, shopping, managing bills. My spotless medical records. My physician's third signed affidavit. But I knew this wasn't about evidence. It was about perception. They wanted the world, or at least a judge, to believe I was a confused old woman acting out of spite. It was humiliating. And that's when I realized they wouldn't stop until I made them stop. Not with silence. Not with logic. With visibility. So I called Rebecca Jennings, the reporter from Channel 6. "You said if anything new happened, you'd want the exclusive," I told her. Her voice sharpened. "Tell me everything." That week, the follow-up segment aired. Prime time. This time, I didn't sit quietly on my porch. No soft focus or tears. I looked straight into the camera in my living room, flanked by legal folders and copies of the trust documents. "My son is trying to have me declared incompetent because I gave my home, my life's work, to someone who didn't try to steal it from me," I said. "Let me be clear. Age is not incapacity. And inheritance is not entitlement." The segment exploded. Social media lit up. More messages came in, this time not just from neighbors, but from strangers across the country. Elder rights advocates, lawyers, survivors. They shared stories of betrayal, of manipulation, of children who turned cold the moment assets entered the conversation. But not all the messages were supportive. Anonymous accounts accused me of turning the public against my own family. Some called me a bitter old woman. Others said I was setting a dangerous example by bypassing my son. But I wasn't afraid of being hated. I was afraid of being erased. One evening, as I folded laundry in the den, I heard a knock.
Ella.
She stood in the doorway, clutching a notebook and looking more serious than I'd ever seen her. "I want to testify," she said quietly. I blinked. "What?" "I want to tell the judge I wasn't manipulated. That this is what I want too. Ella, sweetheart, you don't have to get involved any more than you already are. This is my fight." "But it's about me now too," she said. "Dad's trying to say I was used. I wasn't. I know what this house means. And I want to help protect it." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Because she wasn't just a child anymore. She was a bridge between what had been destroyed and what could still be saved. "I'll talk to Jennifer," I whispered. "And if she agrees, you'll speak." That night, as the waves crashed softly outside, I lit a fire in the hearth and sat in the armchair that had once been my husband's. I pulled out my own journal, the one I hadn't written in for years. And I wrote, "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's who you trust to carry it forward." We had one more court hearing coming. One more chance to show the truth. And this time, we wouldn't just defend the house. We'd defend the future. The courtroom was colder than I expected. The walls were plain, the carpet a tired gray-blue, and the rows of wooden benches too uncomfortable for the weight everyone in that room carried. But what made the air icy wasn't the building. It was the silence that fell when I walked in. Matthew was already seated at the front, in a pressed suit that looked like it had been bought just for this occasion. His lawyer, a sharp-jawed man from Seattle, was flipping through a binder. Brooke was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding behind another scandal. And to his right sat Ella. She wore a navy cardigan and held her small journal tightly in her lap. Her feet didn't even touch the floor. But her chin was raised, and when I caught her eye, she smiled, the kind of smile that told me I was no longer walking in alone. Jennifer guided me to our table and whispered, "He'll try to make you emotional. Don't take the bait. Just be you." The judge, a stern woman named Judge Carolyn Vega, entered minutes later. Everyone stood, then sat in a wave of tension. "Ms. Hale," she began, looking directly at me, "your son has filed a petition seeking conservatorship over your estate, citing concerns of diminished capacity and undue influence by your granddaughter. We'll begin by hearing evidence from both parties." Matthew's attorney went first. He used the same playbook every manipulator does, feigned concern wrapped in polished language. "She is, without question, a woman of rich history and admirable independence," he said. "But that independence has been strained in recent years. Medical records show hospitalizations, social isolation, changes to her will and trust in emotionally charged moments. We believe Ms. Hale is not making decisions in her best interest, and that a vulnerable minor has been weaponized as a proxy in an emotional conflict." Weaponized. He said my granddaughter was weaponized. Jennifer stood slowly. "Objection, Your Honor. That's not an argument. That's character assassination." "Sustained," Judge Vega said. "Stick to evidence, counselor." Matthew was called next. He took the stand and looked at me, not with anger, but with a carefully curated mask of sadness. "My mom used to call me every Sunday," he said.
She taught me how to ride a bike.
"How to paint. How to pick myself up after I got dumped in college. She was everything." He let the silence hang. "But she changed," he continued. "After my wife and I bought our new house, she got distant. She felt left behind. And I think she made these decisions out of hurt, not logic." "And the forged deed?" Jennifer asked when she cross-examined. He blinked. "That wasn't my doing. But your name was on it." He hesitated. "I trusted my wife." Jennifer leaned forward. "So, you're telling this court that your wife filed fraudulent real estate paperwork in your name, without your knowledge, and your response was nothing?" He looked away. No further questions. Next was Ella. My heart thudded as she was sworn in, her small hand resting on the Bible. "Ella," the judge said kindly, "you understand why you're here?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you know what it means to inherit something?" She nodded. "It means you take care of it. You honor what it meant to the person who gave it to you." "And do you believe your grandmother made that decision because someone told her to?" Ella looked directly at Matthew.
No.
"She made it because she knows I love this house, and I love her. And I never asked her for anything. I just listened." The room was silent. "Anything else you'd like to say?" the judge asked. Ella looked at me, then at the judge. "I think when someone gives you their trust, you don't try to take more. You say thank you, and you take care of it." That was the moment the courtroom cracked open, not loudly, but with something deeper. Respect.
Truth.
And then it was my turn. I took the stand.
Slowly. Carefully.
Every joint reminded me of its age, but my voice had never felt stronger. "I'm not here to convince anyone I'm sane," I began. "I've passed every test, filed every form. I know who I am." I looked at Matthew. What I don't know is when my son stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an obstacle. He blinked. "I loved you," I said. "I bent for you,
Broke for you.
sacrificed everything so you could have a life better than mine. And when I needed one thing, just one, to stay mine, you tried to take it." I turned to the judge. "This house isn't just a building. It's my life, my marriage, my son's childhood. It's the ocean outside that gave me strength when my husband died. It's the walls that held me when no one else would. I gave it to someone who didn't ask," I said. "To someone who came into this home and honored it, not with greed, but with reverence. And that is not mental instability. That is clarity." The courtroom stayed silent for a long moment. Then Judge Vega said, "I've heard enough." She recessed the court for 48 hours. And as we stepped outside into the afternoon sun, I felt something shift. Not just the case, but the balance. For the first time in months, the burden wasn't on me to prove I was worthy. It was on Matthew, to prove he hadn't thrown his soul away chasing something he never earned. 48 hours. That's how long the judge asked us to wait before returning to the courthouse for her ruling. But it felt like 48 years. The first night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan in my bedroom, listening to its soft hum and wondering how many mothers before me had been forced to defend their sanity just to protect their dignity. The second night, I walked the beach until dawn. My footsteps sank into the wet sand as the tide crept in and out, like breath. The sky was dark at first, then purple, then gold. I watched the sun rise like I had so many mornings before, but this time, it felt like something was being washed clean. And then came the morning of the verdict. Ella rode with me. She wore a white dress and held my hand the whole way there. She didn't say much.
She didn't need to.
Her presence was enough, calm, steady, loyal. Matthew arrived separately, alone this time. I wasn't sure if it was because Brooke refused to be seen or because even he couldn't pretend anymore. Either way, the chair beside him stayed empty. The judge entered, sat down, and folded her hands. The court has reviewed all testimony and evidence presented. What's clear is that this case is not about incapacity. It's about entitlement. Her voice was firm, unmoving. Ms. Hale has demonstrated a clear, consistent ability to manage her affairs. Multiple independent evaluations confirm she is of sound mind. The trust documents are valid. The transfer of the estate to her granddaughter is legally binding and ethically sound. Matthew didn't flinch. He just stared down at his folded hands like he was waiting for the world to end quietly. Mr. Hale's petition for conservatorship is hereby denied, the judge said. Furthermore, based on the evidence of past forgery and attempts to undermine Ms. Hale's autonomy, this court recommends the district attorney pursue an investigation into possible elder exploitation. My breath caught. It was over. Truly over. The judge's gavel struck once. And just like that, the courtroom emptied. Ella hugged me before I even stood up. "You did it," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "No, sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair back. "We did." Jennifer joined us in the hallway, grinning for the first time in weeks. "He's not going to challenge again," she said confidently. That ruling was ironclad. "What do I owe you?" I asked her. She smiled. "Just send me a postcard when Ella plants her first hydrangeas." As Matthew walked past us on his way out, I caught his eye. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything he'd done was finally settling on his shoulders. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend himself again. I'll never know, because I turned away, not out of cruelty, but because sometimes peace means choosing silence. Back home, Ella and I stopped at the old oak tree near the front porch. She reached into her bag and pulled out something wrapped in tissue, a framed photo of my husband. The one where he's hammering the porch railing, sweat on his brow, pride in his eyes. "Thought we could hang this by the door," she said. I smiled, touched. He'd like that. We went inside. The light through the windows was warm. The air smelled like salt and lemon soap. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, my home felt like home again. Not a battlefield, not a transaction, not a prize to be won. That evening, I hosted dinner for the Sea Line sisters, our little group of women who'd stood with me from the beginning. We sat at the long table, laughing, sipping wine, and talking about everything except the case. Because the truth was, we'd all won something greater than a ruling. We'd won the right to be seen again. And when the last of the guests left and the dishes were stacked in the sink, I found Ella on the porch with her notebook, drawing the horizon. "You're going to do something big one day," I said as I sat beside her. She looked up, puzzled. "Why do you think that?" "Because you already have," I said. "You stood up in a courtroom and told the truth when it mattered. That takes guts." She smiled. "I had a good teacher." I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out a small, silver key. "What's this?" she asked. "It's the second key to the safe," I told her. Where the deed is. The will. The journal your grandfather wrote in. Everything important. She held it like it was made of gold.
This is yours now.
Not just when I'm gone.
Now.
Because legacy doesn't start with a funeral. It starts when someone trusts you enough to carry it forward. She nodded, clutching the key to her chest. I won't let you down. I know, I said. That night, I wrote a final entry in my own journal. The house is still standing.
So am I.
And because of her, it always will be. The waves crashed outside, steady and eternal. My story, at last, was no longer one of loss. It was one of reclamation, of endurance, and most of all, of choice. This home would never be stolen, because I didn't just protect it. I passed it on to someone who understood its soul. And that is how you end a war, without losing who you are. If Sophie's story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to defend what was yours against family, against fear, against the pressure to just give in? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon for more powerful, true-to-life stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters.